I'm going to be showing my no death run with Blade during this gameplay and kind of talk about what I don't like about the mode. The Marvel Rivals PvE is really good and it's pretty fun a lot of the time, but there are a lot of complaints and critiques I have for the mode. At the end of the day, it was really fun to play up until you start using other characters that are not as viable. Originally, I wanted to make a video that was a tutorial and sort of a guide on every single character, thinking it would just take at least maybe 3 hours to complete because I would have to learn each of the characters and all of their cards, what is best for them. But after finishing Nightmare 4 with Blade and Jeff, and starting to work on Punisher, I have completely stopped those plans. Blade is objectively the best character, so good in fact that they didn't even touch him when they buffed everyone else. They left him alone, and that's fine. Honestly, playing Blade is really fun when it's the first character you played, or you just kind of get used to playing him after maybe a couple rounds. You know, if you started playing with another character like Punisher, you get to Nightmare 4, you see how difficult it is with Punisher, and then you swap to Blade, you're probably going to be frustrated with the fact that Blade is just so easy. But when you first start with Blade, it's fun. Bit of a hot take, but I think that every character should be somewhat similar to Blade. Not in playstyle, but very similar in the sense of you're not struggling when you're playing as any other character. If you didn't know, Blade has 36% lifesteal. That's including all that magical math that they give him. It's 36% flat. He has 4,000 base HP at Nightmare 4 with all of his cards and whatnot and points put in. And every other character does not have that. They don't have lifesteal by default. They like barely get a smidge of it, but it's not good enough. And they all have roughly around 2,000 HP. The numbers aren't exact, but Blade has around 4,000. Everyone else has around 2,000. Doesn't make sense how that's possible because Thor is a tank and has less HP by a mile compared to Blade. And based on voice lines, the amount of care put into Blade, it's very clear that the game mode was made for him. And that's totally fine, and I can understand that. But there's pretty much like no story going on. We all have seen the show or have at least seen clips of it. You don't really need to watch it. There's not much going on, okay? So Blade being the main focus is cool, but I think every other character should have been given that same amount of care. Obviously, this was given about 6 months of development, so it's really okay for them to not have all of the things correct, but the fact that they knew that there was something wrong, they instead just buffed damage and did nothing else is a really bad sign. And I am hopeful, like, you know, after this PvE mode, maybe we get the Sentinel stuff that they talked about a little bit, or just getting one where you fight waves of Ultron bots. You know, there's a lot of options, and I think that they can absolutely capitalize on that, and definitely will, based on player charts and whatnot, like Steam charts, shows that there was a big boost, and everyone was playing, which is good, so they're going to do more of it. And obviously they said they're going to do more, but I hope that they really go all in. But yeah, playing Punisher, it's probably one of the most frustrating things I've had to endure when it comes to this game. Worse than getting someone that's really bad on your team in quick match or ranked. I would rather put up with that and deal with a thrower than deal with this game mode. And personally for me, I don't like that a lot of the builds and techs and all that sort of stuff that people have created for the game mode is just based around gambling. In your first round, you gamble, you duplicate a card like 40 times or whatever, you know, that's hyperbolic, but you duplicate it a certain amount of times and then you just have a lot of damage to start the run, so you don't really have to worry about it as much later. This is good for every character that isn't Blade, and Blade benefits even more from this, but it's pretty much a standard. Like, you need to do it for any other character that isn't Blade, which is bad. I don't like that. The fact that as you go throughout rounds, there's no real buff that you get, it's just you're there and the points that you spend is your buff. I don't really like that. Movement speed is a bit of an issue, especially for Frank. You know, he just can't move. You have the zombies that throw stuff. They're probably one of the most annoying zombies out of everything. They have more base HP than the normal zombies, which makes no sense because they throw stuff. They can predict where you're going, similar to the skeletons in Minecraft, where they kind of predict where you're moving. They throw stuff a little bit ahead of you, and it's overall just really frustrating, especially if you get bubbled by Namor. Speaking of Namor, that bubble, you know, effect is dumb and needs to never be put in the game again, and it needs to be removed, honestly, because it's not fair. Blade is the only person with an ability that he could just use that breaks the bubble. No other character gets this advantage. And based off of experience, if I remember correctly, Jeff doesn't get picked up at all for some reason. At least in my runs and attempts, he just didn't get picked up, which is fine. I like that, but every character should be given that same amount of leeway. And honestly, altogether, Namor as a character during this is probably one of the most annoying. I can understand Wanda being annoying to some, but she's very predictable, and I enjoy that with this type of mode. Namor as a boss is the most infuriating and has ruined my enjoyment altogether. I'm fine with him placing about 1,000 squids when he finally drops drops from the sky, but when you have to deal with him and Wanda on round 15, Namor will just not drop from the sky for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, if you're unlucky. There's a lot of ideas that people have had about what's going on with it and why he does that, where he doesn't drop for a while. Regardless of if you are hitting him or not on accident, he just does not fall from the sky quick enough for you to actually quote unquote speed run the mode. Now I know there's plenty of people that have figured stuff out. There's a bunch of people who are at the top 500 leaderboard. I'm not worried about that. I'm just saying off of my time, there was a few occasions where I would be playing and I would have to spend like 15 minutes just shooting his turrets brainlessly, and eventually he'll fall from the sky. I find that to be not very interesting. And altogether, the rest of the zombies are sort of okay. I think the ones that are super fast are really obnoxious. The ones that are highlighted red, it's just more or less a lot of my complaints are coming from playing Punisher, not gonna lie. But you know, fast zombies that predict your movement, they one-shot you. One-shots in general in this mode are just not fun. Doesn't feel great. I would assume them having one-shots is the reason why we have revive tokens, because they know that it's unfair. But at the same time, revive tokens are just there for you to spend your money. Obviously, you don't actually have to spend money. You can spend the blue currency because that's what it takes, but you can convert your gold, which is the premium currency, Lattice I think is the name, and turn that into the blue units, which then makes it essentially a pay-to-win system. And it also takes away from the fact that there's people with the titles of Queenslayer and all that stuff because, well, they could have used 100 revive tokens to actually get that, when for someone like myself, I soloed it and didn't die in my attempt. I don't get anything different from that. But before I forget, the bosses in general and how they work and how a lot of the stuff works is it's all stat checks. A stat check is essentially just checking to see if you meet the requirements of stats, you know, health, damage, all of that stuff. The biggest problem being not having enough HP, not having enough damage for certain bosses and waves like, you know, the third phase for Wanda, and not having damage reduction. If you do not have enough damage reduction by a certain round, it can be the only reason why you lost, because getting one-shotted is more than possible in this mode. But if you have enough damage reduction, that's not possible. If you have about 10,000 HP, which every character pretty much just needs 10,000 HP, you're pretty much set. But if you don't have enough damage because you focus so much on your survivability, you'll just explode. It's really stupid. And the main reason that this has been a problem for me, and the thing that has just been bothering me, is because they have challenges now that require you to do Nightmare 4 with each character solo. Very specifically solo. And you might be thinking, Ben, that doesn't sound that bad. That must be easier because, you know, the bosses and everything have lower HP in comparison to when you do a full squad. There's also less zombies that spawn. Yes, I understand that. But I think all of this would be far better, and I would not complain as much if it would just be possible to do with any amount of people. Obviously, people would finish it fast, but I think they wanted to do this to just drain people's wallets, because a character like Punisher is just not fair solo. He's genuinely not. You have to do way more than any other character, it feels like, and it's just not fun. It's genuinely not fun. I can't stand it. And I'm at the point now though where I'm just not playing the game mode. I'm not going to do it again. I don't care about the 300 currency I could get because I haven't done Magic or Thor, and maybe I'll do those instead. But Punisher is legit the most infuriating character to play in this mode, and it could be skill issue. You know, that's the thing. Maybe to some people you got really lucky, or you had enough revive tokens and you were finally able to beat it, and it is going on for like a month more from this point of hopefully me uploading this video. You know, there's at least a couple weeks. So you can save your 3 free revive tokens every day and just stack it up until you get to that part. But I personally feel like it should be possible to solo it and do it without revives. Revives feel like a requirement for certain characters, and that's not really fun. On a positive note, I will say I look forward to what they can do with the PvE in general. I don't mind them using the Khonshu's blessings more. I hope they change the name and, you know, do certain other things with it. But, you know, it would be nice if you could favorite some of them so that you get those consistently for your runs and all that. It would just be nice if, you know, quality of life improvements. I would like to see it improve. I would like to see us get more for it. But as of right now, I'm probably not going to play any more of it. And I've looked up plenty of builds and, you know, techs and guides and all that sort of stuff for this, and that's how I know a lot of the things that I do about the mode. But it does feel like if you were to try to figure this out by yourself, you would be spending at least 10 hours per character besides Blade. I'm okay with Blade being strong, but I think everyone else should be just as strong. So here is to the GOAT, or, you know, supposed GOAT, Blade. Hats off to the devs making him the most broken character in this mode and not giving that type of leeway to any other character. Thank you. Probably is going to seem like complaining. I'm not sorry. It's really annoying. If you've played Punisher or some of the other characters and not just Blade, I think you understand what I'm getting at here. So yeah, there you go. Hopefully next stuff is better.